Hello, everyone. This is Kim Doherty, and I am really excited to be talking with you today about being a mentor or finding and working with a mentor because over the course of my career, I've had an opportunity to be mentored by some really, really wonderful individuals, and it's the course of my career in such wonderful ways that I want to encourage you to think about this, having a mentor, working with a mentor, as you go through your career. Today we're going to sort of look at how you go about doing that, how you ask someone to mentor you, what a relationship looks like, those sorts of things. So you'll be really comfortable with reaching out to someone. So first of all, let's talk about what we're going to look at today. We're going to talk about what a mentoring relationship is and isn't, because there are a lot of misconceptions about what's a mentor supposed to do for me, or what's my relationship with this person who's sort of coaching me. So we'll look at that. Then we're going to spend some time looking at how to identify or find the best mentor or mentors for you, because sometimes they can be in places that you wouldn't expect to look. Then we'll talk about how to work most effectively with a mentor. What do you need to do? What are the steps that you need to take? Sort of what's the etiquette? How do you respond in a way that lets your mentor know how much you appreciate their involvement with you? And then lastly, how to become a mentor yourself. And it's not so much that you have to be a top executive at a company. It's simply that you have expertise that someone else could benefit from sharing. So you will frequently find yourself really in both roles. You're being mentored by someone, and you may be mentoring someone else. So something to think about as we go through our process here. Why is this important to you? As I said, I've found that having a mentor has been incredibly helpful in terms of growing my own career. I've had an opportunity to help other individuals. If we sort of boil it down to its factors there, the benefits, if you think about your professional equity, that's made up of what you know, who you know, and who knows about you. And working with a mentor can help you develop all three of those aspects of your professional equity. Also, beyond the professional benefits of this, it also marks the beginning of a wonderful and sustaining professional relationship. So we will find as we go through this that even if your sort of dedicated mentoring relationship to an end, you've accomplished the goals that you were trying to accomplish, and so you don't need a mentor in the way that you did initially, you may find that working with this individual becomes valuable to you as a personal relationship that keeps going and keeps informing and benefiting your career as you go through, and becomes also a wonderful friendship. Okay, so what is a mentoring relationship? There are kinds of relationships when it comes to mentoring. The most basic is it a formal relationship or an informal relationship? That means if it's a formal relationship, it's usually set up by your employer, and they'll have very specific ideas of what they want you to get out of the relationship, how much time is involved, assessment, those sorts of things. So if you're working with a mentor through your company, which is always a great idea if they've got a program, expect it to be very structured for you so that there's less activity that you have to undertake in terms of creating your questions or what you need to know, that sort of thing. An informal relationship puts much more responsibility on you because basically you're sort of making it up as you go along. Now, it can be really terrific and beneficial for you, but you need to sort of be aware of the difference between the two approaches. a formal mentoring relationship usually based on developing your skills for the employer. So they're hoping that someone can mentor you so that you're more valuable to them as an employee, so that they can move you into a new position and you add increasing value as that employee. An informal relationship is really more based on what are your goals as an individual. Where do you want your career to go? What do you want to learn? It's more about your priorities and your agenda than the agenda or priorities of your employer. Mentor is also a relationship that's based on a more experienced individual or advising a less experienced individual who asked for a specific type of guidance. So an example would be, say you really want to move up in your career, but your technology skills aren't real strong. So you might look for a mentor to help understand what you need to learn in order to grow in your career. So there's that specific type of guidance. It might be technology skills, it might be leadership skills, it might be anything that will help you grow professionally, but you're the one who's sort of identifying what is that will give you the greatest benefit in terms of that relationship. Always goal-oriented. It's not just a casual conversation. It's not, gosh, what do you think I should do with my life? It's goal-oriented, and those goals are based on your personal agenda. So we're going to be the one who's identifying the goals. It's focused on achieving those goals. So part of what we're going to talk about is how do you figure out how to pursue with your mentor in terms of your own goals. It's not your mentor's responsibility to figure out what those goals should be. That's part of your job. So figure that your relationship will be goal-oriented, focused on achieving those goals in appropriate ways, and also there's going to be a high level of accountability. This is why it's so important for you to be ready to responsibility for a mentoring relationship, and that's you as the mentee, because if you're working with a good mentor, he or she is going to hold you accountable for following through on the actions that you guys have talked about. So it's a sort of difference between having a casual conversation with somebody about, guy, I really think I'd like to go in a different direction with my career, and sort of nod around some ideas, and a mentoring relationship which is saying, okay, I'm ready to make a change. Here's where I think I need to go. Here are the things I need to achieve. Then your mentor will step you through the tasks to achieve those things and hold you accountable for those actions. So that's what a mentoring relationship looks like. Now let's look at what it really isn't, because sometimes people have a misunderstanding, and then that can lead to not so hot outcomes. Let's put it that way. So a mentoring relationship is not a way to get a job. It's not the mentor's responsibility to say, oh my gosh, I know somebody who's got a job opening and what you're looking at. Let me see if I can connect the two of you. Sometimes that, in fact, does happen, but it's not likely to happen, and you should assume that it won't happen. So don't go into a mentoring situation hoping that that person's going to help you get a job. Excuse me. It's not an exercise in ego gratification. That really is more from the mentor standpoint, because sometimes it's very easy for mentors to understand the relationship and think it's all about you sort of, as a mentee, you telling them how terrific they are and hang on their every word and following all of their advice and that sort of thing, which, quite frankly, is a real ego boost. But if, as a mentee, you find yourself having a sense that that's what's happening, you need to realize that probably this is not the relationship for you to be in. Because it's being pretty much all about you, it's going to end up being all about that mentor. It's not a psychological or personal counseling relationship because, frankly, most mentors just don't have the skills. They know stuff about careers, they know stuff about business or their industry or those sorts of things. But if you need psychological or personal counseling, you need to work with someone who actually knows how to do that rather than a mentor. You think they know how to do it, they really don't. And lastly, it's not a casual conversation without goals. We talked about that earlier. This is goal-oriented, it's focused, and it's accountability. So, given all that, you want to think about whether or not you're ready to work with a mentor because you don't want to start a relationship. You don't want to reach out to someone and ask them to mentor you if you're really not ready to do the work. And that doesn't mean you're a slacker. It just means you've got too much going on right now, or you've got family issues, or you're moving, or you're starting a new job, or whatever. If you don't have the bandwidth in your life to not meet with a mentor but follow through on your action items, then maybe it's time, or maybe it's not time to move forward with this yet. So here are some questions that you could ask yourself to clarify whether or not you're ready to do this and it's going to be a useful activity in your life. And the biggest one is, what do I hope to learn? Because the start of a relationship is going to be based on the questions that you have said you need to have answered, goals that you have identified that you want to meet. So you need to do that work of what is it I hope to get out of this. The question is, am I comfortable taking advice from someone? And this is important because we know that there's some piece of your life where somebody could sit you down and say, have a heart-to-heart with you and say, you know what, the talking in that last meeting just really isn't working for you. And you can hear that and you're okay with it. There are other times in your life when you've got so much negativity going on that somebody giving you advice and sort of constructive criticism, you basically just want to whop them upside the head. So when you think about working with a mentor, think about, am I in a good place in my life where I could take advice and not become defensive about it, not take it personally, realize that this is someone who's trying to help me. You have the time and motivation to commit to the relationship is really, really important, because when you ask someone to mentor you, you're basically saying, I think you're the person who could help me reach my goals. Now, that's a real asset to have in your career, quite frankly. You don't want to burn that bridge. So it's better to wait to reach out to that person until you know you're ready and you have the time to do this, rather than reaching out before ready and that person think you're a flake and lose confidence in you, because then they won't want to mentor you. It's sort of like you can't try it and then blow it and then reconnect them and say, okay, now I have my act together. You want to make sure you're ready and you do have your act together. Are you ready to take responsibility? And that means, are you ready to do all of the activities, all of the follow-through, all of the connections that are going to come out of your mentoring conversations? Because the way it will work is that you'll say, here's what I'm trying to do. Your mentor will probably ask you some clarifying questions, and the two of you will together say, okay, here are the things you need to do. You need to do A, B, C, and D. And that's going to be your job to do A, B, C, and D, and take responsibility for following through on all those activities. So these are the 4 questions I would suggest you ask yourself before you look for someone who can help you as a mentor. Seeing that you did answer yes to all those questions, the next big one is, how do you find a good mentor? And sometimes this can be, an adventure. Let's look now at what's a good fit for a mentor. And in some ways, it's not exactly what you would expect. First of all, somebody who has expressed interest in your career if possible. That means someone who's gotten to know you, they've seen your work, and they've taken interest in you and how you perform and your character on the job, and they've just generally thought, this is someone who really gets it, and I'd like to help them even more successful in their career. So if you have someone who's indicated an interest in your career, that's a great starting point to consider them as a mentor. The other is someone who gets you, and by that I mean they necessarily need to like you. They need to be good with who you are. So if your style is pretty out there, you work with a mentor who thinks that's just fine, even if they're the most conservative person in the world. You guys don't have to be similar people, some personalities. You just want someone who knows and believes you're good just the way you are. Because what you want to avoid is someone who's continually criticizing because they themselves are different. They think you should be more like them. So something just to watch out for. And then, of course, they have strengths in your area of interest. Have they worked in this industry? Have they worked in this career field? Have they had the type of job that you're looking for? If there's experience in the areas where you have goals or you like to grow, that's a real plus. Someone who is confident with their own success so that they will be comfortable supporting your success. And the way that plays out is you work with a mentor as you go through your career. You may find that mentors early in your career, how would I say it? You succeed beyond where they are. So you achieve more success in your career than your mentor does. The mentor will be thrilled for you and applaud and continue to help in any way he or she can. It comes from their own sense of confidence. A mentor who is less self-confident would not be as able to support your success and could end up sabotaging it. So you want to make sure who you're working with is real emotionally balanced and centered and very self-confident. Again, similar to the person who gets who you are, you work with someone who isn't adamant that you follow a specific path. So if you're working with a mentor and after a couple of meetings they say, I know exactly what you should do, and it's X, Y, Z. You're really not that hot about X, Y, Z. You need to make sure that your decision not to follow that path does compromise your mentor's enthusiasm for working with you. Because sometimes people are so adamant about knowing what's right for you that when you don't follow their direction, they simply write you off. And so it's something you want to sort of set out when you're talking to someone. Know that you are exploring, and you're happy to explore what ideas they give you, but you're not necessarily going to make a commitment to whatever career path they think is the right one for you. And then lastly, you want someone who is committed to focusing on you and your well-being, helping you learn and grow and meet your goals. And that sort of wraps up all of the ideas underlying a mentor. This is someone who is for you and wants you to be successful and will do what it takes to help you accomplish that. And just to get really easier to work with them, you want someone with whom you can communicate easily and openly. And that means a bad day, you can say, I've had a bad day. You can be excited with them. They're responsive. They communicate easily. You want a comfortable flow. If someone doesn't converse comfortably, they're probably not going to be a great mentor for you because you need a lot of verbal feedback. You're able to ask questions and get full, comfortable answers back from your mentor. In line with that, or aligned with that, it's really important that you work with someone who feels around whom you feel emotionally safe. Because when someone's mentoring you, you're going to get pretty honest with them. You are going to share a lot of information with them, and you need to know that they're not judging you, they're not criticizing you. Whatever you say, you're saying it in a safe environment. So at any point you feel that that might not be the case, you probably want to withdraw from that relationship because you won't be able to make the most of it. Again, so who themselves can communicate ideas as clearly as possible to you and information, because sure that you have captured the information that your mentor is sharing with you. You can only do that if that mentor is effective at sort of organizing that information. For example, saying, okay, here are 3 things that I think you want to think about. Or, okay, let's line these out and look at them in terms of action items. So you're looking for someone who has very, very strong communication skills, so you can actually learn from what it is that they're sharing. Then here's where I said these things may be sort of a surprise. The mentor for you, given what your goals might be, may be someone who is younger than you. And in the 4-generation workplace that we're all working in these days, that's very likely to be the case. In fact, the last project team that I led, I had 20 individuals, all of whom were between the ages of 18 and 22. And I'm not going to tell you my age, but let's just say that's not my age bracket. And so we reverse mentored. They mentored me on social media, and I mentored them on professional development. And I gained huge amounts of knowledge and confidence based on the mentoring that they gave to me. So I would encourage you to keep a really open mind about who your best mentor might be based on what it is you're looking at. Similarly, your best mentor may not be at the same level you're in your company. They may be at a lower level, but that doesn't mean that their expertise can be incredibly valuable to you, and in fact may be able to cross-mentor them as well. Maybe a different gender, and I would suggest that you go through your career, actually seek out mentors of different genders, not your opposite, your own gender. Because as a woman, you have a perspective that may be different than the perspective of a man. And I can learn some real valuable skills by reframing what I'm thinking about or my goals or my questions based on how a man might frame it or think about it. I learned this from my son, who is one of the best negotiators I've ever seen in my life. And he, when he was 16 years old, it made me crazy because I'm terrible at negotiating. But they had him sit down with me and take apart how he views a situation when he's to negotiate. And that was completely alien and foreign to me. And I learned a tremendous amount from that. So I suggest if you are a guy, make sure that some of your mentors are females and get a different perspective than are usually around. Similarly, if you are a woman, seek out throughout your career, not always, but at some point, seek out male mentors, because the different approach to life is incredibly valuable in helping you have a broader perspective. And then whoever the mentor is may have a very, very different personality, and that can be terrific except for one situation. And this still may work fine, but I just want to point it out. You are an introvert, and your mentor is an extrovert. Your mentor may recommend that you do things, undertake actions, for example, around networking, that an introvert you would find extremely difficult. And an extrovert mentor may not realize that. So just something to keep in mind and to recognize. Doesn't mean you shouldn't work with each other. It just means that you want to recognize and make visible the different ways of interacting with the world, so that you can point them out when they're on the table. That you will work with many mentors over your career, because everybody does have different strengths and experiences that can help you immensely. Okay, so we find these guys that are living up to all of our goals here. There are some places I would check if I were you. Your workplace, your professional network, which is broader beyond your employer, hopefully, sort of in your career. Professional associations or groups, which, by the way, have formal programs where they'll have a list of people who have signed up to mentor individuals, and especially students coming into the field, and have information about those individuals. So you can choose someone that you would like to have as a mentor. So if you're in a professional association, I would strongly recommend that you look to see if they have a mentor program. Mentors are always great because they really care about their students. And I've been teaching now for 15 years, and I'm still mentoring some of the students that I had 15 years ago. And so it's a wonderful way to find a mentor if you have a good instructor, because they really know you and really want you to succeed. And occasionally be mentors, but usually there's too much personal stuff to make that a clean relationship. And the thing with relatives, definitely not your parents, because as parents they can't help but have very specific ideas about what you should be doing. So I would tend to stay away from friends and relatives unless you don't have any other option. I'm going to reach out to this person who's going to really help you in your career. I sort of look at a standard process that you want to make sure you are doing these things. So first of all, you're going to identify the help that you're requesting. Remember when we talked about it's going to be up to you to set your own goals and clarify your questions. That's where you say, I feel I could benefit from some mentoring in this area, and I would really appreciate it if you could help me with XD. Then identify who might be a good individual to work with as a mentor. And what you might want to do is, if you're thinking about someone as a mentor, spend a bit of time with them. Go to lunch with them. Just hang out with them without pushing the mentor possibility, and see how they fit or don't fit the criteria that we've talked about before you ask them to be a mentor. Ready, just reach out, and you can do that with a phone call or an email if you're not in regular contact with them, and that's easier. Person, whichever fits your circumstances. When you do that, you want to do these three things, and these are really important, because when someone asks me to mentor them, especially want to look at 2 and 3. So as general courtesy, you first want to acknowledge their expertise and that you know how busy they are. Then you want to say, I would appreciate it, or it would be wonderful if you could mentor me about this topic, and this is how I would like to structure that. So one day a week, or one day a month, or meet for coffee every Friday afternoon, or whatever. You want to be very, very clear about what time commitment you're asking for, because for a lot of us, that can determine whether or not we can say yes. And lastly, you always want to give them an out. You want to make sure they understand that you understand if this isn't going to work for them. So read through this. I'm just going to let you know that you have this here, so when you're trying to structure your request, you can go back to this, because this webinar will be available to you online. And you may be more conversational than this, but the 3 points. 1, acknowledging who they are. 2, specifying what it is you're asking for. And 3, that's still specifying what you're asking for. 3, telling them that you appreciate their consideration and you understand that they may be able to. You often want to ask, however, or open up the opportunity of them being at a different training for you at a different time. Especially if it's an instructor, sometimes they'll be able to do it like your fall quarter or whatever. You want to open that opportunity that even if they can't do that for you right now, it could do it for you in the future. That would be really wonderful. Now that we've talked about how to find that perfect mentor and reach out to them, let's look at how you are going to work with them. Remember, you want to be the one to identify the goal and the agenda for the mentoring relationship. Here are examples of some of the things that you might be looking for. So when you're thinking about your goals, look at ideas and think, okay, am I trying to address a professional weakness? Am I struggling with managing a very diverse team? Do I need a specific type of professional skill? Do I need to really work on that? For example, I needed that in social media. You can know what that is, but you first want to understand what it is you're asking for help with. You want to get ready for that first meeting, and this is where you're going to dazzle that mentor with not how brilliant you are already, but how serious you are in your commitment to working with that guy or that woman. So I tend to recommend that people start off by asking about their mentor's career path, because that's basically a courtesy and it's a sign of respect. Then can discuss a little bit about your own career path, which segue into here's what I'd like us to work on. So you don't stand immediately and just say, hey, I'm really glad you're willing to do this for me. Here are the 3 things I want to accomplish. You want to sort of lay the groundwork for a conversational relationship that then you will pursue from that point forward. When you have that first meeting, you want to identify how often and how you're going to communicate. And that means if your mentor sends you an email or you send your mentor an email, is that once a week? What's that about? Is it about your follow-up on the things, the tasks that you had from the last meeting? Is it to set, where you're going to meet, whatever? The most important thing is to get the structure set up so that it's established for both of you. So it's in your calendar, it's in your mentor's calendar, and you know that it's a commitment that you both have. So you want to establish that relationship. You want to look at confidentiality, and usually what both agree to is we're going to keep what we talk about between us, just between us. So I'm not going to talk about what you told me to anybody else unless it's something that's related to you're looking for a job and your mentor knows about a job opening and said, would you please tell them I'm interested. The most important thing here, though, is individual roles and responsibilities. And that means who's going to do what. And generally speaking, that means that you're going to do all the work and your mentor is going to be doing all the reacting. So when you have a meeting, you'll have a discussion and your mentor will give you recommendations, which will be taking notes madly, what he or she is saying, and then your job will be to follow through on that. For example, if your mentor says, I think you should interview 3 people in this field and ask them these 4 questions, your job is to do that. So most of the work, all the legwork, is going to be on your shoulders, and you want to make it clear in establishing the relationship structure that you understand that and that you are eager to be in that role. You're minimizing the amount of work your mentor will have to do and doing most of that for yourself. Few pointers to impress your mentor and want the person to work with you again and again. Always be on time. Have that, however, we know that things come up. So you want to make sure that if something does come up, you call your mentor immediately, and hopefully your mentor is courteous enough to call you immediately as well. You have a mentor who calls a lot and blows off a lot of your meetings, you're probably going to want to look for someone else because they're not that engaged in that case. You always take notes at every meeting. You may not act on everything that you're taking notes on, but it does 2 things. One, it helps you keep the process moving forward, organized. And 2, it signals to your mentor that you are taking seriously the advice and counsel you're receiving. So that's the most important things. And then out of that sheet of notes or sheets of notes, you want to always leave with an action item list. And that's as simple as saying at the end of your coffee or meeting or whatever, okay, so reiterate the thing I'm going to do are, and then go through and highlight those action items because that's what you're going to do and then report back on in your next meeting. So then after you've had your meetings, how do you proceed? You are the person who shows up to the meetings with the agenda or a list of questions, and you make 2 copies so your mentor has one and you've got one. You always want to report back on those action items that you've been making notes on. You want to confirm the date and time for the next meeting. So again, these are all your responsibilities. So isn't this fun? You have to do all this work. Here's how to be the world's best mentee. From my perspective, I think this helps you find people who will want to help you grow. You will be accountable. We've talked about that and taking responsibility. You always want to respond quickly to communications from your mentor. Even if it's just a brief, I got your message, let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. To actively listen to what your mentor is saying and ask questions. So, and I know this because I actually have this problem, some people tend to interrupt people who are talking, and I'm trying to discipline myself not to do that. When you are in a mentoring situation, it's especially important that you do not interrupt your mentor when he or she is talking. You listen, and then you ask your questions. Be positive and engaged. I tell you from personal experience, there's nothing more frustrating or discouraging than working with a mentee and having a negative response to every suggestion, every idea, every potential option. When someone's response to all of those things is, oh, that would never work, I couldn't do that, oh, no, I tried that and it didn't work. If it's always negative, your mentor will basically just give up. So you want to be positive. In fact, you have tried something and it didn't work. Yeah, I tried that and it didn't work. And let's talk about what you would suggest. So maybe this time it would work better for me. So our goal is to keep things in a positive light that allows you to focus on solutions rather than on obstacles. So now you've had a great experience with a mentor. You'd like to become a mentor as well. And again, it doesn't make any difference how old you are or where you are in a company. If you have expertise that other people could benefit from, this would be something you would really enjoy. So look at some things to think about to see if you would enjoy it. Would you enjoy talking really all about somebody else? It's pretty much focused on your mentee's needs, what they need to do, and what their agenda or priorities are. Would you keep all those discussions to yourself? Because that's a critical way that people build trust, and without that trust, you can't have a mentoring relationship. Would you be comfortable working with someone who was very, very different from you in terms of look like or their personality? How if your mentee challenged your ideas and statements? Because a good mentee should. Back to not being negative, if you're a mentee and your mentor is giving you advice and for some reason that's not going to work for you, then your job is to say, here's what I experienced, and it didn't work. Let's about how that could be different. So if you've given, as a mentor, if you've given a recommendation, you need to be comfortable with your mentee coming back to you and saying, maybe not, let's think about that. Well, if they disregarded your counsel, for those of you who have children, you know that this is a very comfortable feeling and you're just fine with it. Would you be, and this actually is a tougher thing, would you be comfortable holding this individual accountable for the things that he or she was supposed to do? Because in some situations where I've been a mentor, that's been the biggest issue, getting people to follow through. Would you be okay with your mentor taking a different career path? And would you be able to support your mentee without getting overly emotionally involved? And this gets back to the mentoring is not psychological counseling, it's in line, and it can be challenging to keep this line in place when you're mentoring, but it's really better for both of you if you do. And how communication skills, because this is critical to be able to transfer your knowledge to your mentee in a positive way. And this is really important. You want to be honest with your mentee, but you never, ever want to be harsh. You want to be supportive when you have to deliver information that you know is going to be painful. Some best practices. Safe harbor. This is if you're mentoring, you want to create a safe harbor. You want to ask good questions of your mentee. You can think of all the different ways that you could help. And that might be connecting them to someone you know, recommending something to read, having them do some self-assessment exercises. Think of all the different ways that you could help them. But at the same time, that we all have limits and biases, and you want to get those limits and biases on the table with your mentee or your potential mentee, so they know what you can help with and what you probably can't help with. You want to coach and encourage more than instruct or tell people what to do. And these things. And then, of course, learn to let go. Let your mentee go the direction that he or she needs or wants to go in. So if you turn them around, go to what you look for in a good mentor. If your mentor is not able to do these things for you, then probably this isn't the mentor for you to work with. Occasionally, a mentoring relationship just doesn't work out. So what happens is a mentee who is ending the relationship or the mentor, the things you want to do. You want to be appreciative of the effort that each one of you put in. You want to be respectful of that individual, whether it's the mentee or the mentor, even if you have differences. Be as tactful as possible. And that means saying something like, this has been a great experience for me. I think I gained what I was hoping to gain from the relationship at this point, and I think it's now me just implementing this and following through on it independently on my own. But thank you so much for the feedback and counsel you've given me. Because you want to wrap up on a positive note, you don't want to burn a bridge, you don't want to have there be bad feelings, and again, the conversations should always remain confidential. For those of you who are interested in either being mentored or mentoring, there are some resources that I think will be helpful to you. Some have exercises, some have guidelines, but they're helpful because mentoring is a relationship that seems like it would be easy to do and easy to establish, but you can hit some landmines if you're not paying attention to how the relationship is going. So I would highly recommend these books. Questions. Usually the question that comes up, and I haven't addressed it here because it's kind of a long question, is what to talk about with my mentor. What kinds of questions would I ask my mentor? And so I'm happy to tell you that Brian Stratton is going to be posting in the Brian Instant College online blog a list of questions that I would suggest you use or you sort of do riff on as they apply to you to help you think about what questions would be the ones that I would gain the most from. And that